And I, for now, would be advising a little bit of caution rather than aggressively buying dips at the moment.
If there is one time to start, it is now. Because in down market only you must start. And in down market you must not stop.
Bluechips saved the day as Dalal Street goes on a roller coaster ride. A late pullback helps the Nifty recover over 140 points to end with minor gains, but market watchers remain divided on entering at these levels.
Crude prices bounce back today, and Russia prepares for an era of lower oil prices, plans to cut expenditure and sell stake in state-run banks.
24 hours ahead of its earnings, the Infosys stock catches up with TCS in terms of valuation after many years. The street expects a modest third quarter. The stock gains nearly 3%.
When will this 6 quarters of underperformance bottom out?
Maybe you should look at a fortune teller. I don't want to say that.
TCS admits the third quarter has been the worst in nearly 7 years. Hopes US to drive growth in 2016 despite higher visa costs.
Pakistan acts after India identifies Jaish chief Maulana Masood Azhar as the mastermind of the Pathankot attacks, puts him under preventive custody. Foreign Secretary level talks on Jan 15th likely to go ahead as per plan.
India will offer contracts to build 12 ultra-mega power plants over the next 2 years, says the Power Minister Piyush Goyal on his visit to Japan. Promises to ramp up capacity to 50,000 megawatts. A report from Tokyo coming up.
In a bid to address the rural distress, the Cabinet clears a new crop insurance scheme. Farmers to pay less premium and get early claims for the insured amount.
Airtel moves faster to exit Africa, sells its business in Burkina Faso and Sierra Leone to Orange, estimates the deal value at around 6,000 crore rupees.
Supreme Court seeks clarity from the Mysore lab which tested Maggi samples, asks if lead and MSG were within permissible limits, allows 8 weeks to the lab to give its final verdict.
The United States of America, right now, has the strongest, most durable economy in the world. Anyone claiming that America's economy is in decline is peddling fiction. If you doubt America's commitment, or mine, to see that justice is done, just ask Osama bin Laden. When politicians insult Muslims, it doesn't make us safer. It's one of the few regrets of my presidency, that the rancor and suspicion between the parties has gotten worse instead of better. Big-hearted, undaunted by challenge, optimistic. That's what makes me so hopeful about our future. Thank you. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
The man who took office with a message of hope is signing off with the same in his final State of the Union address. Barack Obama urges anxious Americans to be hopeful of a better future. He stoutly defended his presidency and took a dig or two at Republicans, especially Donald Trump. Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. A detailed report on Obama's final hurrah is coming up in just a bit. Hi, Nandara.
Hi, Shireen. How can we talk about Barack Obama and not talk about Michelle Obama? She wore this yellow woolen dress and got quite a lot of attention for it at the final State of the Union address. So that's the dress Michelle Obama wore.
Okay, I'm not sure what the big fuss is about that yellow dress, but anyway, Michelle Obama making a fashion statement, as she pretty much almost always does. But more on that coming up in just a bit. Let's go to the action on Dalal Street. A roller coaster ride on D Street. The bulls coming out swinging in late trade, lifting the markets from their lowest levels in more than a year. Now, the Nifty did recover, if you bring up that intraday graph, over 140 points from the intraday lows, ending the day with gains of about 50 points today. Similar story playing out for the Sensex, which also recovered over 460 points, ending closer to the 25,000 mark. And today, it was really all about the blue chip stocks like Reliance Industries leading from the front and taking the markets higher. Mid-caps continue to languish. Anuj is standing by now with the details of what was another dramatic day on Dalal Street. Anuj, after getting battered, the bulls are starting to throw a punch or two, but the question now is, how is the script going to play out from here on?
Tough question to say what happens from here on, because today it was so volatile. In fact, if today someone had seen market opening and seen market closing, he or she would have said the market was flat after opening, right? I mean, it remained where it was at open. The open and close are almost at same level, but in between you saw a V-shaped chart. The Nifty went down over 100 points and saw 165-point intraday recovery. Remarkable, really, the kind of volatility we haven't seen for quite some time. We have been in volatile times, but today clearly topped it all. Mid-caps were butchered in the first half. They recovered in the second half, but still they went home with deep cuts. Let's talk about the stocks that led the market recovery in the second half. And right on top, you had two stocks, Infosys and Reliance. Both of them were up 3%, and both of them had same contribution to the index today. Tata Motors as well was a major contributor, up about close to 3%. Apart from that, private sector banks did well. A lot of people believe that maybe, valuations now look quite interesting for some of them. So stocks like ICICI, for example, did well. IndusInd and HDFC Bank anyway have been doing better than most of the private sector banks. Let's talk about some more stocks. Then some other nifty gainers included HDFC, Mahindra and Mahindra, and even Lever was up about 1.5%. What was dragging the market then? It's all about Larsen & Toubro right now. 2% lower on Larsen & Toubro. TCS made a new 52-week low. On a day, Infosys was up 4%, TCS was down 2%, and Idea Cellular was down about 4%. This is now the weakest stock from the index. Outside the index, some losers included Marks & Sparma, down 20%, Morpin Labs down 10%, and Subex was down about 5%. But there were some stray winners as well. Balrampur Chini made a new high today, up 6%. DCB Bank was up 5%, and Torrent Power was up about 8%. So an extremely volatile day. The big question is, has the market made a bit of a bottom? Because the market did make quite a bit of bounce back today, but that's something that will be answered over the next few weeks.
The bulls show some grit today. Thanks for that, Anish, for joining us with that. So how should you play in this volatile market? Is it time to buy? The opinion on Dalal Street is deeply divided. Here's a bulls versus bear argument between Ramdev Agarwal and Adrian Movat.
The guys who are not there in SIP, if there is one time to start, it is now. Because in down market only you must start, and in down market you must not stop. Very purpose you did the SIP in the good market. Looking back, I'm saying at 9,000 you started SIP. You did that because you are not comfortable with 9,000. You thought that market might come down to 7,000. But now when market has come down to 7,000, you should not stop it.
I think the structural flow story from domestic institutions is still in place in India. This is a story about less competition from fixed deposit rates, and over a medium-term view, you've had a reasonable compounded return from Indian equities. What you've always got to remember with flow stories is, as a fund manager, if I'm nervous, I can choose not to invest that money that's coming in and wait for a better price.
So that's Adrian Movat versus Ramdev Agarwal, the bull and bear case. But where do you put your money and what sectors to stay away from? Here's Pratik Gupta of Deutsche with his bets for 2016.
We have been advocating a defensive stance on the market for the near term. Private banks is mainly driven by, most of them are actually corporate, most of the corporate lending banks we don't like. We're more in favor of the retail-focused banks. So that's one reason. The PSU banks, unfortunately, a lot of them tend to have very heavy corporate loan books. There we think things are still pretty dire, and you will see more aggressive provisioning in the next 2-3 quarters. And the earnings upgrades are unlikely to happen. IT, we think the concern is, while on one hand you may have benefits from a currency depreciation, which will probably help to mitigate impact of the things like the higher visa fees and so on, but you also have a US election year coming up. The rhetoric typically goes up, and more importantly, these stocks haven't corrected as much. IT has been one of the star performers in calendar 2015. And the refining companies actually we like. We actually prefer the downstream, the OMCs, the gas utilities. So those are sectors we like.
That's Pratik Gupta of Deutsche Bank with his top picks. Let's head across to Wall Street. Now the markets there also turning out to be quite volatile. Stocks have pared all the early gains. So after a strong opening, look at the Dow, the S&P and the Nasdaq, all of them slipping into the red. And Shireen, that's primarily because of what's happening in the crude market. We've seen crude prices also turning for the worse and heading down. And that's after the EIA came out with some data to show that there's a huge gasoline buildup. So NYMEX has just now gone into the red. And Brent also, which was about $32, others, has continued to sell off and bear some gains.
Well, that's right. In fact, crude markets have come off their highs, and as have the US markets. Also a factor that is sort of playing out as far as the crude markets are concerned. News coming in from Russia as the fall in oil is starting to hurt the country. The finance minister has warned that low oil prices for a prolonged period might force the oil-producing nation to take hard decisions, and budget cuts are extremely likely. The finance minister of Russia has also added that the country's budget depends heavily on oil prices staying closer to the $80 per barrel mark, which looks increasingly improbable this year. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev has also voiced concern, saying that the country needs to steel itself for tough times ahead. And of course, crude prices back to declining at this point in time. As Nentara was pointing out, the EIA data shows a massive gasoline build-up. That's the news that's just coming in, and that's impacted prices as well. But back home, a day after reporting third quarter earnings, IT giant TCS has admitted that the quarter has been its worst since 2009, with the company failing to get off to a good start in 2016. Menika and Kritika find out what TCS plans to do.
Q3 traditionally is a weak quarter, but this time is worse than ever before.
This is true especially in terms of dollar revenues, which have come in at their lowest since FY 2009. No surprise then that October-December 2015 has left India's largest IT company, which holds a record for beating analyst estimates for 10 consecutive quarters, is not feeling very comfortable. Delays in project execution and decision-making in India have hurt TCS's growth by 50 basis points on a constant currency basis. Arguments that North America and Europe have done well provide no relief. So, despite this sluggish India business being termed a one-off occurrence, TCS will continue to reduce its exposure to India.
I wouldn't say India is a headwind or anything. India has been volatile and we've been trying to fix that. Our India business has also come down from 13% of the revenues to 6%. This quarter the extent of drop is more than we anticipated because it's not a single client.
Adding to the pain is the fact that integration of its subsidiary CMC has begun to hit revenues from India. This quarter alone, that damage stands at 100 crore rupees.
As we have integrated CMC, some of those renewals we have not necessarily, as we are realigning that portfolio closer to the TCS business mix. So some amount of drag is coming from that also. So it's nothing about going wrong, but overall, unless the investment, actual money on the ground investment cycle picks up, this market is going to remain in this mode.
Its business in Japan and volatility from its UK subsidiary Diligenta are also sore points. But in both these areas, TCS expects some relief over the next quarter. But what has rubbed salt in TCS's wound is the US government's decision to increase the H-1B and L-1 visa fee, which will add to employee costs.
It will be upwards of 25 million for us. Whether
Upwards
it's
of 25
million, it could be 30, 40 million or so. Depends on.
But south of 50 million?
South of 50 million, yeah.
South of 50 million.
The one pleasant surprise in the third quarter has been TCS managing to maintain margins at 26.5% and sticking to the projected margin band of 26 to 28%. But adhering to this target band means less business flexibility.
The 26 per se is a strategic peg, and that strategic peg gives us a lot of headroom, right, to do what we believe is right. So if we were to change our business mix in a manner where that is changed, we will call it out. But we are not wedded to that. The 26 to 28 has to be seen very tactically.
So far, TCS has managed to maintain its lead over its peers in terms of business execution, the growth of its digital business and margin expansion. But it has still turned in a disappointing performance for the sixth quarter in a row, and that has analysts worrying over whether the entire industry is in for a tough 2016. In Mumbai with Menka Doshi, Kritika Saxena.
So after a disappointing show by TCS, Infosys will announce its third quarter earnings tomorrow, and all eyes on the IT bellwether. The Infosys stock today slumped in trade before then staging a late recovery, as that intraday graph shows you, and finally closed about 3% higher. Now, CNBC TV 18 poll shows that Infosys could catch up with the growth rate of TCS this year itself. Rima joins us now with the analysis. Rima, while in terms of valuation, it looks like Infosys has caught up with TCS, but nevertheless, the street is expecting a modest quarter from Infosys as well.
Yes, expectations are not very high from Infosys, but the stock went into its earnings very strong. And in fact, the valuations of Infosys have now caught up with that of TCS. If you look at it on a forward PE, they both are now trading at 16.5 times. And that's happened for the first time in many years. So dollar revenue growth is seen slightly lower on a Q-on-Q basis. A, because there will be a non-recurrence of that $23 million one-time benefit that they got in the prior quarter. Secondly, Chennai floods. And thirdly, because of seasonal weakness. And all this will impact their margins as well. So margins are seen down by about 80 basis points, and that will hurt their profits to some extent. The company didn't give us a profit warning on Chennai floods like TCS did, but they'd already guided to a weak H2. Because remember, despite a strong first half, the company didn't raise its full year guidance, which meant that the asking rate in Q3 and Q4 was quite weak. And secondly, there was a conference call which was held in November-December when the company said margins in the second half will be lower than the first half, which drove margin cuts by most of the analysts. With respect to the all-important guidance, constant currency growth, currently the guidance stands at 10 to 12%. That will be either maintained or the lower end could be raised, which means it could stand at 11 to 12%. So that's what the street is working with.
So that's what the market expects from the Infosys results. Thanks, Arima, for joining us with that. As always, we'll be decoding those results live for you right here on CNBC TV 18. The Union Cabinet today gave the go-ahead for a new crop insurance scheme. This new scheme aims to reduce the premium burden on farmers and ensure early settlement of claims for the full sum that's been insured. The premium charge now will be up to 2.5% of the insured sum for food crops and up to 5% for horticulture crops. At present, the premiums charged go up to 25% of the sum insured. The government plans to cover 50% farmers via the scheme in next 2 to 3 years, as against the current coverage of 23% of the scheme that is being implemented from the next Kharif season, that is June of this year. Here's what the Agriculture Minister Radha Mohan Singh had to tell CNBC TV 18.
जो नई बीमा योजना लाई है प्रधानमंत्री बीमा योजना, इसमें अब जो खरीफ फसल है उसमें 2% का प्रीमियम होगा मैक्सिमम, और रबी के लिए 1.5%. तो अब ये हो गया कि कम देना है और कैपिंग को हमने हटा दिया, तो कम देना है और ज्यादा लेना है.
That's the new crop insurance scheme as part of the budget process and trying to reach out to farmers to alleviate the rural distress. Now, Japan figures very high on the government's Look East policy, and the Union Power and Coal Minister Piyush Goyal is in the land of the rising sun to attend the Strategic Energy Summit being held there. He's also announced India's plans to set up 12 new ultra-mega power projects over the next 3 years. CNBC TV 18's Rituparna Bhuyan is in Tokyo and fills us in with all the action.
Top companies of Japan, including Panasonic, Hitachi, Yokogawa Electric and TLV met Power Minister Piyush Goyal today. Goyal also met his counterparts from the Shinzo Abe administration, and he told me that the top 3 areas of cooperation between both the governments in the energy sector will be renewable energy, clean technology as well as energy efficiency.
The Japanese companies have very good expertise and technology. We are looking to engage with them through larger volumes and large economies of scale, driving down costs. And the Japanese side is willing to invest large amounts of money to help us roll out our energy ambition.
Japanese power companies told Piyush Goyal that they are willing to increase their proposed investments in India. Not only that, several Japanese financial institutions are keen in funding Indian power projects.
We have already announced the joint development of the bullet train project from Mumbai to Ahmedabad. Apart from that, many of the ancillary companies related to the train project, overall railway infrastructure upgradation, the energy sector, all of them are looking to come to India. The Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, DMIC, also offers opportunities to them. And their funding agencies see India as a bright spot where they can get a very fair return on their capital or debt investment, particularly when their own economies are not able to grow very fast.
On his part, Piyush Goyal told prospective Japanese investors that his department will soon bid out at least 12 ultra-mega power projects.
Retired Central Vigilance Commissioner Mr. Pratyush Sinha, also supported by Mr. Pramod Dev, a former regulator, Mr. Vishwanathan, a former banker, Mr. Rakesh Nath, very eminent people sat together and have crafted extremely robust UMPP documents and framework, which has been welcomed both by industry and by the lenders. Under that framework, I do hope in the next 3 to 6 months to be able to bid out the first 3 or 4 UMPPs, one in Orissa and one in Tamil Nadu, which had to be deferred the last time around, possibly the one in Jharkhand, which could not be implemented earlier, and our commitment to the people of Bihar to set up a UMPP in Banka. After the rollout of these 4 UMPPs, I have a laundry list of another 8 in the pipeline.
So you're going to see bids for 12 UMPPs over 2 years and for 3 to 4 in the next coming few months. French telecom major Orange has acquired Bharti Airtel's operations in Burkina Faso and Sierra Leone. As per a company statement, Orange is going to acquire 100% stake for around 6,000 crore rupees. Kritika Saxena has been tracking that deal, now joins us with the contours. Kritika, would you say this deal is along expected lines and as per Bharti's strategy of selling off loss-making units in Africa?
Well, Orange has been in talks with Airtel to buy out some of its African subsidiaries. So the initial conversation was to buy out 4 specific subsidiaries, and pardon my pronunciation here, it's Burkina Faso, Sierra Leone, Chad and Congo Brazzaville. And out of this, the conversation has gone through with only 2, that is Burkina Faso and Sierra Leone. The reason why the other 2 haven't been sold off yet is because the agreement with Orange has lapsed. So for now, 2 subsidiaries have been sold off. Now, in terms of the kind of valuation, Street is working with anywhere between $300 to $400 million, but that could be only on the higher end. What the company has said is that for now, Orange will acquire the 100% stake in the 2 companies' share capital. The consolidated revenue of both the companies together is around 275 million euros. So that is what Orange will get, and Bharti Airtel is expected to get, according to some reports, at least 4 to 5 times EBITDA of that. So, of course, this will help Bharti Airtel bring down debt. But the larger point is that they are now narrowing the losses that they've been making in Airtel and overall trying to consolidate their position. Going forward, it remains a little bit of question if Orange will follow through and look at acquiring other subsidiaries, or if Airtel will actually look at selling off the remaining subsidiaries, as it has done in the tower business, wherein they sold multiple geographies to different players. So we'll wait and watch out for that.
All right, Kritika, many thanks for joining us. The Bharti Airtel stock was lower by about 2% today. The Supreme Court wants more evidence before it passes a verdict in the Maggi noodle case. This after the government argued that the test reports submitted by a lab based in Mysore are of older samples and not from the fresh batch after Nestle restarted manufacturing. Ashmit joins us now with more details. So, Ashmit, what exactly does the court want now from the Mysore lab?
Well, it appears that the Mysore results, the Mysore lab results, which were keenly awaited, expected to give clarity as far as Maggi being compliant with the lead and the MSG standards, has caused more confusion than clarity. Now, they submitted their initial report, and what's interesting is that the report was limited only to data with respect to lead content. And secondly, there was also a caveat in that preliminary report which said that they needed more samples for further testing on other safety parameters. Now, on a ballpark, on a prima facie reading of these numbers that were put before the Apex Court, the Nestle counsels argued before the Supreme Court that they believe that their understanding is that the data suggests that Maggi is indeed compliant with lead standards and that this does amount to a clean sheet. Furthermore, they also hit out at the FSSAI, arguing that it does appear that increasingly, FSSAI is increasingly on an ego battle with Nestle in this case. Now, the government, of course, has sought to rebut this position, arguing that the data was nowhere near definitive and was too premature to take calls on that, and they have sought further testing of Maggi noodles. Now, taking cognizance of this position of the government, the Apex Court echoed this stance, reasoning that even in their assessment, they believe that the data is not definitive, and towards that position have given a clear mandate to the Mysore labs to go ahead, further test the Maggi noodles, even seek further samples if required, and finally, after an 8-week window, come out with a final result on whether or not Maggi is indeed compliant with the lead and the MSG standards. So clearly, as of now, the final word is yet to be written. The onus being put squarely on the Mysore labs. An 8-week window is now what we're looking at. Back to you.
All right, so the wait continues for Nestle there as far as the Maggi noodle fracas is concerned. But Ashmit, hang in there because you were also tracking the call drop matter. What's the latest there?
Well, today was, of course, day 3 of arguments between the telcos on one side and TRAI on the other. Today, of course, was a field day for TRAI. It came out, mounted a defense of the call drop penalty. They began first on a conciliatory note, conceding before the High Court that they do understand that there are issues related to spectrum, related to tower infrastructure. But from there on, they started mounting a defense. They argued that they believe that the investment that the telcos have put forth is not commensurate to the rise in subscriber numbers. They also argued that as of now, the way the call drop penalty is structured, the burden as far as telcos is concerned will be very minimal. Second, they also argued from a point of law, arguing that the quality of service regulations, yes, are in place, but that does not necessarily bar a simultaneous, a parallel mechanism such as a call drop penalty mechanism. And finally, they conceded that yes, they do have a statutory backing to this entire process, and that they do believe that this is the need of the hour in light of public interest. This was, of course, supplemented by various consumer interest groups that have also appealed before the Delhi High Court. They, in fact, were of the opinion that this is too little too late. Nonetheless, the Delhi High Court, as of now, has concluded hearing for the day. We'll see further hearing on the 15th. But what's important is that they've also warned the telcos to be careful in terms of collecting data in terms of call drops beginning Jan 1st, and also a letter of the telcos with a warning, observing, in fact, that they believe, the Delhi High Court believes that the telcos should not be complacent about it, should be wary in terms of complying with the collection of data, and that they should not proceed on the footing, and that there can be no potential liability. So a warning being put out by the High Court. Nonetheless, we'll see further arguments on Friday. That's January 15th.
All right, Ashmit, appreciate you joining us with both those stories. Now, here's the big national story. After India threatened to postpone talks, Pakistan has detained Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Maulana Masood Azhar, the group which carried out the Pathankot terror attack. The move comes after India gave evidence of Jaish's involvement in the Pathankot terror attack. India had named Azhar as the mastermind. His brother Abdul Rauf has been identified as the handler of the attack and has also been taken into protective custody. The Indian government has so far not officially confirmed the development. Hectic parleys are currently underway at the Prime Minister's residence at 7 Racecourse Road. 2 high-level meetings have been scheduled. We understand that the External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj in talks with the Prime Minister at this point in time, and a decision is likely to be taken on whether the Foreign Secretary level talks will go on as per schedule. Anchal Vora joins us now with the latest. Anchal, what can we expect? What is the latest on this front?
The very latest that we've heard from Ministry of External Affairs is that officially the government has not had any confirmation from Pakistan's government yet of Maulana Masood Azhar's detention or protective custody. So that's the very latest, which is something that actually CNN IBN has been saying. 2 very important meetings taking place. One already has happened. Foreign Secretary visited Sushma Swaraj, External Affairs Minister's home, and now they're at the 7 RCR. That's where a meeting is taking place. We believe that a decision on the talks or no talks or postponing them would be taken very much tonight, even though NSA returns only tomorrow. The FS is very much here. He returned this evening. All of this is highly significant as it is playing out, because earlier in the day from Nawaz Sharif's office, Prime Minister's office in Pakistan, a statement came which said that they've arrested a lot of people that belong to Jaish-e-Mohammed, and that they would want to send an SIT, a special investigation team, in consultation with the Indian government. Then we spoke to our sources in the Indian government at the highest level. They say that looks like that Pakistan wants to create a good environment, and that is very welcome, but they're analyzing the statement at this moment quite intensely, because even after 26/11 Pakistan had made similar suggestion, and thus far there is no conclusion of that very important case, and the victims of Mumbai 26/11 are still waiting for justice. Indian establishment, all hands on the deck at the moment. All sorts of consultations are happening in order to make an announcement soon, but the very latest is of Maulana Masood Azhar's detention or protective custody. Nothing officially has been told to the Indian government. In fact, in news that is just coming in, Sushma Swaraj saying there is absolutely no confirmation yet about Maulana Azad being detained. So that seems to be the latest update that we have, and the Prime Minister himself is going to decide on the fate of the Foreign Secretary level talks. More news from the capital. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley chaired a Financial Stability and Development Council meet in North Block today. The Finance Minister, who took stock of the economy with all the financial regulators, reiterated the government's growth target of about 7.5%, while acknowledging the fact that the global situation remains challenging. He also took heart from the fact that indirect tax collections have shown a consistent rise in the first 9 months of this fiscal.
A lot of operational issues, streamlining operational things and all that. Those are the kind of issues discussed. We reiterated our earlier request, to make the NPS triple E product. That request was made last year also. So we have reiterated that.
And besides the financial sector regulators, Arun Jaitley also met with leading economists ahead of the Union Budget 2016. The customary free budget consultations are considered important as it helps the government in formulating policies.
There can be some deviation, but one has to adhere to fiscal deficit in the medium term. Agriculture is in bad shape. Unless we have good monsoon, agriculture growth won't be there. So there are a lot of suggestions on productivity increase in agriculture. There is a need for push in social sector expenditure, particularly on health.
So the pre-budget consultation process currently underway, and Infosys co-founder and chairman of the SEBI panel on startups also met the finance minister today. He's urged the government to create an environment which will encourage new entrepreneurs.
I hope that the coming budget will make the life of the poorest of the citizen better. That's the best that I would say, and that requires us to encourage those that create jobs, to encourage those that attract a lot of foreign investment, those that are in venture capital, because they're the ones that are helping entrepreneurs translate their ideas into reality.